I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
The more you talk, the harder I want to hit you.
I'm happy because of being here today. Fuck you.
Come on, you want me to drive? No. You're supposed to be suicidal, remember? I'll
Anybody
drive.
a drive?
Get in the car.
Fucking shit. Fuck me in the fucking ass. Fuck you, you fucking stupid cunt.
Wow, was this depressing and hard to get through. Wow. Hey everyone, it's Donji Corleone here, and I'm here with a brand new movie review. And this review is going to be for the 2025 true story film based off a 2010 shooting, Sovereign, which is directed by Nick Mosseri in his directional debut. So what is the plot of Sovereign? So the story is this father son who identifies sovereign citizens who, as you all guys know, they're a group of anti-government extremists. They find themselves in a standoff with this chief of police that sets off a manhunt. So, as for my reaction to the movie, as some of you likely do know, this is based off a real police shooting that happened in West Memphis in 2010. How it went was these two people, this dad and son, named Jerry Joe Kane, who are members of the anti-government group called Silverains, were on the road. Two cops pulled them over because their car did not have usual license plates. And apparently Jerry also had 2 arrest warrants. As he was about to be arrested by the 2 officers, Joe then emerged and shot both of them. And then 2 hours after that, they stopped in either, maybe it was a citizenship place or maybe it was a Walmart place. Some say it was either one of those, but eventually the minivan stopped 2 hours later. It was stopped by the sheriff and enforcement officer. They got wounded by their guns. This one wildfire officer rammed their van, saved those 2, and both the Canes were shot to death in the shootout. That's how it went. And that's what this movie, Sovereign, is based off of, and the events surrounding it, and kind of leading to what happened. So, I just watched the film, and this is going to sound crazy that I am saying this, but I think this might be tied with Warfare for my favorite movie of the year. I do kind of like Warfare slightly more, but I also did love this too. Now, rest in peace to both the cops who were shot in this shootout. And now, some may wonder why movies based off real-life murder cases would often get made or praised. Well, they don't always do, but the ones that do get praised are either because the actors play the bad characters who killed the victim well. The actors who play them actually play the performance well. Or they're well shot. Or they're well directed. Or they stay true to what happened. Like, films like Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, like, that's well loved and that's considered one of Michael Rooker's best roles. Or 2003 film Monster, Charlize Theron. The reason why that got loved by people is because Charlize played the character that it was based off of very well. Charlize Theron worked hard for the role. Like, she gained some weight for the role. Actually, the makeup artist made her look like the actual character she was playing. She gave an award-worthy performance, and that's why she won the award for the role. That's why that film was well loved. Alpha Dog has mixed reviews. That's based off another real life tragedy. And as mixed received as the film is, there are people that praise the late Anton Yelchin, may he rest in peace, performance as the murder victim. So, there are times it can work. Not all the times it can, but if it's well directed and if it's well acted, then it can work. Then it can work those ways. For me, that's the case with this. Now, I don't praise what the two did. I don't praise what those two did. But the reason being I like the film is because it's well acted. It's well acted. I think Nick and Jacob work well as dad and son. I do think they do have some good scenes together. I think it's well cinematographed, and there are some good performances in the film, and it actually, and also because it sticks with you. That's why with this film I liked it. But how was this film made? Well, this was kind of getting planned around February 2023, and they announced the cast members, Ahmed Tremblay, Dennis Quaid. Then May 2023 is announced that Briarcliff Entertainment had acquired North American rights to the film. When it came to shooting the movie, it was shot in Arkansas in February 2024. Then it also occurred the same month in Lincoln in that area, then Springdale in that area. Then after the film was officially completed, it wasn't very wide released. It was more kind of limited released by Briarcliff Entertainment on July 11, 2025, and it was also released on digital the same day. It did get positive reviews from critics. Not too many critics because it wasn't screened for the whole public. They praised the lead performances, and it got released on DVD by Universal around the very last week of summer. So yeah, that's why it eventually came to DVD and I watched it. Now let's get on with the good qualities and the whole story of how Silver Ring goes. And my favorite things about Silver Ring. Now sure, this isn't going to be a movie for everyone because it is heavy, it's heartbreaking, it even gets really terrifying at times, because it really leaves you in an inevitable state of doom. There are hopeful things that would happen in the film, but once you continue to watch, you know that hopefulness is in borrowed time, especially if you know the real life case of what happened and what the movie's based off of. I didn't know much about this case until this movie was confirmed and announced. And people are like, they're making a movie. Why? Why are they making a movie of these two? And once I'd known what Silver Ring is, a part of me was kind of also a little worried for this film, getting all preachy and stuff. That was one of the kind of my little worries with the film. But the film doesn't really get too preachy with the stuff, and when you find out this tragedy occurred in 2010, long before the current state of the world today. But I don't need to talk about that stuff. And once I had finished watching the film, I had Googled the case. I Googled what happened and how the case went down. And yeah, it's messed up, and rest in peace to those two officers. Rest in peace to those two. When it comes to the performances, Nick Offerman really sets the bar. I like Nick Offerman as an actor. I like Nick Offerman in the show Parks and Recreation. There was this one underlooked film called The Kings of Summer that I liked him in. I think that film was very underrated. I liked him in the Jump Street films. And I did like him in Civil War from last year. And I also do like Jacob as an actor. I am definitely one of the few talented kids in Hollywood today. I liked him in films like Room. I liked him in films like Wonder. I liked him in his voice acting in films like Luca and Ori on the Dark. Ori on the Dark, I wish that got wide release and not Kung Fu Panda 4 instead. I wish that could have got a wide release instead of that shitty fourth Kung Fu Panda film we got with Awkwafina, which sucked. That would have been better. He also had some bad films I don't like. I don't like The Book of Henry. Fuck the shitty 2018 Predator film. That's definitely a huge piece of shit. Fuck the Little Mermaid remake. And I don't care to watch the Toxic Avenger because I think that looks like a piece of shit. I'm talking about the new one that came out. I think that looks like a piece of shit film. The trailer sucked. And not big a fan of Peter Dinklage as a person. Don't care for the Toxic Avenger. For the new one. And talk about the remake of the film. But every good actor has bad films. Every good actor has films I don't like. And Sovereign is actually a much heavier film compared to his big breakthrough role in Room. Right there. But when it comes to his performance as Joe, he really sets the bar high here. And you can see why he's often called the best part of the film. But I think both him and Nick did well in their roles. They had some good scenes together. They actually worked pretty well as dad and son. I like both their performances. I thought both of them did equally great. So how do we start off the film? So we start off we first meet Joe. At first he starts off the film on his own. Where him and Jerry live in a pretty rundown, messy house. Then this cop and a banker show up and tell him that in 30 days, if they don't pay up, they're going to be evicted from their property. So then they tell him to make the house look presentable. They ask why he's not in school. And he tells them, and we find out it's because he's homeschooled, because Jerry won't let him go to school. So he then cleans the house for a presentation, and Jerry comes home from his briefings that you see through the film. I'm going to get to that part later. Then they have dinner. And then Joe has to go finish the rest of his schoolwork. And you can see that he kind of has his crush on this next door neighbor of his. He's never really been able to talk to, but he does send a friend request to this girl on Facebook. And then later that night, Jerry has a few more meetings to go to, and he recruits him for those meetings because he's old enough to take it on now. And that's kind of where the film really takes off. At first, you meet the two Canes, knowing how their life kind of is. And what it's kind of going to lead up to, it's kind of leading up to what happened. But that's where we start off. Sovereign is gripping, it's disturbing, it's human. Direction is pretty confident and purposeful. It draws you a story that doesn't flinch at uncomfortable truths. It does balance tension, emotion, and ideology without not trying to feel preachy or one note. When you have the great performances, it also really helps the film. You can tell they really well casted the actors for the roles, and not only does Nick Offerman do a very phenomenal role, but he actually does give a pretty disturbing performance. And this is an actor that's known for a lot more stern kind of comedic roles, but he actually does well in playing this really disturbed character. In a way, because while there are some good scenes with him and his son, he actually is pretty delusional and definitely is disturbed, and so he was based off a real life bad person. What really sets Sovereign apart is the willingness to kind of sometimes somewhat humanize people in rare times without trying to overdo it. It does not excuse extremism, but it complicates the best way possible and asks the viewer to wrestle with discomfort and empathy all at once. It's pretty much a deeply sensitive, empathetic film that really addresses current issues, and it frames the story between two different fathers and sons, because you have one plot that involves Nick Offerman and Jacob. There's another plot that involves Dennis Quaid's character and his son, who is one of the cops. There's one without a regular job, fighting the system, and one that represents the system. Both portrayals show that neither one is perfect. They both believe they're in the right, but sometimes they're in the wrong. And both state that their way would be the only way, but realize their own flaws that lead to introspective and quiet moments. And it's a beautifully wrapped storyline that can only lead one to think. So, the next day, Jerry and Joe get on the road. They stop and get these white uniforms for presentations. And then a few presentations happen. Usually Joe's role is that he's collecting money from the attendees. Technically somewhat collecting donation money. In a way, how if you ever did go to church, they would sometimes hand out baskets for you to put money in. If you remember, if you did used to go to church, kind of like that. Okay, so there is also one scene where Jerry actually is pretty sympathetic with this one woman that's worried about losing her house, that's attending the briefing. So in a way, that scene, and there's this scene with this one lady friend some scenes with this lady friend of theirs, and Some scenes like with his son, not every scene because there are some scenes when he does yell at him, but there are some scenes where he actually has some minor sympathetic moments. The fictional version of him has some minor sympathetic moments. So after those like briefings, and at one time when they're staying at a hotel and Joe is like washing some of their laundry, then a few more briefings happen. And then after those, they try to go to this bank about their foreclosure, but it gets designed. And then they stop at a restaurant for a bit, and like this is when they're kind of on their way home from all those. They're heading on their way home with all their earnings, but then of course this is when all the bad stuff really does start off. This cop pulls him over because his license plates are not usual. Jerry tries to resist. Joe tries to plead his dad's innocence. The cop pulls Jerry out of the car, arrests him. Before that, Jerry tells Joe to cooperate with the cops because the cops take him out of the car too. They don't drag him out like they do with Jerry, but they pretty much open the door and they make him walk out. So I like that Jerry, at least while still being arrested, he does kind of look after his son's well-being in this bit. And this is where you meet Dennis Quaid's character. And Dennis Quaid's character interviews Joe about his time with his dad while his dad's being held up in jail. Joe, on the other hand, is kind of held in this, care juvie facility where he does attend these classes, play some basketball with some other kids who are also there. And of course, eventually, you find out this lady friend of theirs has bailed them out. Jerry arrives to pick up his son, they meet up with the lady friend, and they get back on the road. This is a film where I wasn't really emotionally prepared for the gut punch this was. Like this is someone who didn't even know about this case until this movie had happened. Or much about Silverane stuff because, I don't pay attention to Silverane stuff. I don't pay attention to either of that stuff. And, this is a film where once it ended, I was just sitting there in shock, just sitting there in silence. It really does also take a dive into mental health as well, and marginalized society. But they're and you know something, it actually does a better job diving into mental health than that shitty Joker sequel did, where anytime that Joker sequel badly tries to be gritty and realistic, they would cut away with a fucking song number. That was one of the worst parts of the film. Another thing, that film does try to be dark and gritty, but the difference is, it pretty much becomes dark, gritty levels like Alien 3. In kind of a way. And it just does it badly. And it does the dark and gritty stuff badly, even without the musical sequences. Even if it wasn't musical, that film would probably still suck. But this film, you could tell this was actually put together with patience and delicacy. It's kind of a great reminder to how much a kid's future could depend on the parents. The movie is kind of a gentle lesson about parenthood, fatherhood, compassion. The good that could kind of come away from a situation like this is kind of the awareness it would bring, and the film kind of does that. And the actors really do an amazing job making you kind of feel the emotional moments, despite some of them are not really good people. But they kind of do connect in a way, and the acting, production, and storyline are actually pretty well done. This was definitely a hard story to tell, but it was done in a very well done way. So, after Jerry and Joe have reunited, they're back on the road, and they take a break from their while they're back on the road heading home, they stop at this casino hotel. Joe gets his own room, and when they're telling him not to charge him anything, the lady friend's come on, he knows, he's old enough, but no pornos though. Which, that was kind of a darkly kind of funny line. That was kind of a funny line when she tells him that, and they get a brief bit of Jerry and the lady friend that's having some fun at some casino games, and she kind of jokes about almost passing out, and there's some bits even time when you even get Joe trying to be accustomed to life because it's hinted he's never been shown much of the world. So this is kind of new to him in a way. He's never really seen much of the world, so he doesn't know what to think much of it. So I thought those moments from Jacob were well acted. He's kind of being accustomed to all this stuff, this hotel room he's in, or just staring at the casino machines. Which is kind of in a way wondering what these things are. I thought those shots were well done. The cinematography is very striking. The pacing really keeps you leaning in. The imagery is very eerie, symbolic, and it does stick with you. And it does feel like an intelligent film that really does well in trying to earn the viewer's trust and also does reward it at times. It might not earn everybody's trust, but it wins my trust. I do feel a connection to the characters and, well, feel bad for the fictional version of the son in this film. In the fictional version, well, I get this is supposed to be a fictional portrayal of what happened. This is kind of a kid that's just kind of trying to grow up into chaos that's created by his dad, who doesn't really want to conform to being a regular person of the U.S. The director does a wonderful job showing the contrast between how some lives are valued versus how others' lives are valued in society. Like when we're shown the mask for when we get to the tragedy scene that happens near the end of the film, like we don't really get the shootout scene till near the end of the movie. That's kind of how the finale goes. We see the officer's family's devastated right there. We're kind of left to imagine what likely happened to the two murderers once they were killed. And the relevance of the movie's matter is the cultural and political climate that's kind of too obvious not to notice. Like, of course, like the tension that leads up to predictable violent climax is also palpable. So, when they're back on the road after their stay at that hotel, and you can see they kind of won some games, and Lady Friend is telling this story about this traumatic event that involved getting kicked by this horse, but Jerry then stops over and does help her overcome her fear of horses by having her kind of pet one within reachable distance, and she does get kind of used to that in a way. So he does kind of help her overcome her fear of horses. So I did like that he helped his friend. He helped his friend overcome one of her biggest fears, but then she ends up going her separate ways with them after that, and she heads back to her home in a different way, while those two continue on with their way back home. So, the two do return to their house, and there's clearly a yellow eviction notice on a door that they ignore. And, well, as you saw, like, during the scenes when Joe was at the juvie center, Joe was, well, told by the person that was supervising him and looking after him that he has a choice to choose his path. And you can see he's kind of starting, and you can see in this movie, he's kind of starting to contemplate that when they get back home. In a way, like, Contemplate now wants to go to normal school after this. So, and then after that, you get the subplot that involves Dennis Quaid's character that's training his son to be in the police force. You get to that part of the story. This is one of the cop characters, and this guy has his son has a baby, and he's often late to some training meetings, as you kind of find out in this film. At one point, Dennis Quaid's character is annoyed by its crying, but his wife tells him that it's only a baby and he has to stop being always rough on his son sometimes. And you get a bit of time here to see like the police academy training of this character's son. So I like you get a bit of time here. You get a break from the Canes, and you get to see kind of this subplot right here. And this subplot does work, and it doesn't really feel filler at all. Sometimes in a movie, a subplot can sometimes be filler or times and not feel well needed, but we also need to be about one of the cops who was killed. We kind of need to be about one of them. So this subplot felt well paced here, and actually did feel like it actually was really well needed for the film. And kind of building up to how this is going to go. These were actually real life people, and this movie does capture it well. Dennis Quaid, I don't mind. I mean, he has been in films I've liked, like Inner Space, The Day After Tomorrow. What else was he in I liked? Well, he was one of the sleazy producers in the film The Substance. Like, he was in The Substance last year. What else has he been in? I can't remember. He has been in films I've liked. I've liked some films with him in them. Oh, wait, wasn't he one of the bad Jaws sequels? Oh. Well, there are still films I've liked he's been in. But yeah, and he wasn't bad in this either. Like, there's also a large question of what thinking could involve, like individual mental illness and collective mental success, and well, the good direction in the acting, the son's faithful dilemma, far loyalty against the pole, really does play out well. It really balances the subplot about the sheriff's family and his own son joining the police force very well. All his characters really collide with each other in a tragic climax, and it shows the devastating effects of that could happen. and consequences from real life raising. So, after the bit of the subplot, we do get back to the Canes, and Joe one day gets in an argument with his dad about wanting to go to normal school, but his dad doesn't like the idea and kind of yells at him for that, thinking that he's giving them their money. And like, hell, yeah, like there's even one sad bit where you actually try to see Joel, where you see Joel actually try to enroll in a school, but he's got no paperwork and stuff that's required, so they don't accept him. So it's sadly very unfortunate. And then it gets worse from there, where cops bang on their door because they're now past the 30-day due date. They're now evicted from their home, and this scene felt chilling. This scene felt really chilling right here. Because when they bang on his door, Joe first tries to get his dad to answer the door, but because like the cops are they're demanding him to open, they're demanding the door be open and it cannot be ignored. He has to open the door, and so they push him aside. They have to go wake Jerry up, and they have to remove Jerry from the house and then he gets mad at Joe for answering the door, and they're now evicted from their house. And like during this lecture, I forget what he's kind of calls. It's a certain word that he kind of learned in his school years. I think it means like something that means lies or something, but he has Joe pull them over. And outside their car, he fires his pistol. Kind of like, I think like in the air or in the side or something. At first it seems like he's pointing the pistol at him, but he actually points it away. And then he breaks down, and I thought this was a pretty chilling, well-acted moment here. Like, Nick Offerman was very chilling this scene. And also very well done once he kind of, like, somewhat breaks down there, and then they're pretty much now homeless for, I don't have a house now. Like, this isn't like a movie about those people, those certain people you do see, but it's kind of more really about a struggling father and doesn't want to admit or deal with his failures, and turns to the laws and definitions to justify why he thinks he's right, and it's really kind of about the struggles of an everyman. In a way that's kind of a bit scary to think about, especially with the top-notch acting, the direction of the tone, the writing, but the purposes for the characters and choices are realistic and tense. You have great themes about poison settings of indoctrination against people now cause an effect on society. And of course, with the supporting cast, like other actors like Nancy Travis, Thomas Mann, Martha Plimpton, they also don't lose the internal power in the two protagonists. Like, this is really definitely a very raw, slow-burning thriller. Like in the first half, you empathize and understand certain aspects of the protagonist's debate. The second half, everything starts to explode. It shatters empathy with a heartbreaking climax that leads up to the whole finale, what the movie's based off of. The director's screenwriter really invite the viewers to reflect on extremism in a compelling film that really fits precisely. So now we get on with the finale. So Jerry and Joe one night spend the night in their car. And there's one bit where Nick Offerman kind of admits that, what was it? He kind of wants to break out of these chains in like one bit or wave, and then of course they try to go. And remember that lady friend that kind of accompanied them for a little bit? They're going to move in. They decide they're going to move in with her for a little bit. And so they're on their way to that house. And so this is where we now get the real crime the movie was based off of. This is the scene where it all happens. So Quaid's son has just graduated the police academy training as now a cop. He's the cop that pulls them over, investigates their license plates, and then he calls for a backup officer. And when Jerry sees this, he then gets out and leaves this gun right near Joe's side. He goes out to tackle the officers and argue with them, and is about to be arrested again. Oh yeah, like when they got back, like Jerry went to the trial. He was assigned for the first arrest he had, and he kind of walked down the court, and thinking they kind of backed out of it, but it's kind of clear they really didn't. And I think the arrest, and maybe this was one of the arrest warrants he had that was kind of mentioned in the real life case. But when this scene happens, when he's about to be arrested again, out of nowhere, Joe then shoots them both down. And once this scene happens, like, this was such a shocking moment. It's like, my jaw was dropped to the floor when this scene happened. And then the two speed off, like, once the two cops are killed. Well, Dennis Quaid's character and his wife are on this way to this lake trip, and they get called to the scene, and he sees his son's dead, and you do kind of feel his character's heartbreak here. Because losing a son for any parent is very devastating, especially if that son that just joined the police force and died on that first day. Meanwhile, when it cuts back to the Canes, they go to a gas station, have to change all their clothes, or all the ones they're wearing, and Jerry makes Joe wash off any evidence off of him because he's the one who shot the two cops. But while they're like in a haste to get all their new stuff on, Joe stops like feed their dog, and Jerry gets mad for that. And then of course, eventually, then this makes Joe run out of the place, tells him to get away from him, and then that's when and that's right there outside he breaks down crying. And Jerry kind of hugs him and tells him they're on their own by this point. And when that scene happened, it actually brought a few tears to my eyes. And honestly, I think it's one of Tremblay's best acted scenes yet. You kind of feel the horror this character is kind of going through now, even though you know what this character did in real life. Because this kid kind of like is now, in the fictional version of the story, is kind of starting to contemplate if he could choose a kind of like a different kind of life. And there's times like Jerry does still clearly sympathize with them, and and after that, you can kind of see on Jerry's face he knows they're not going to get out of this alive by this point, and they're probably gonna be dead in a few hours. So they go to this store for some more ammo, likely to try to shoot their way to safety. Joe sees the girl that he had a crush on throughout the film, kind of waves to him. That's also in the store, but he doesn't wave back, which, to be honest, I kind of wish he did, because this is going to be his last day alive, so he might as well greet her for a bit while he can, but he likely knows he's not going to get the opportunity more, so he doesn't really say anything. But by the time they leave, the cops are already arrived at the parking lot, and the shootout begins. And then the truck rams their van, and both of them are shot down. And then once the two Canes are shot and killed, the final scene is the funerals for the two cops that were killed and a time memorial for the two Canes. Then, after that, you get back to Dennis Quaid's character's house. He sees his son's wife breaking down, has her take a break from her chores because he sees that she's devastated. And you can see, like, even though the guys who killed his son are now dead, he's still crushed by his son's murder. His son was avenged, but he's still not sad, but he still doesn't really look satisfied because his son's still gone. And this scene does show well, like, that revenge doesn't always make people happy. Then he hears his son's baby is crying in the room, and the last shot is him taking it outside and comforting it, after being a little bit annoyed by its crying a lot. But he now embraces his grandkid and takes it outside and comforts it. But that's where Silverine ends right there. And it was a pretty well done, bleak, gritty film. At least it didn't get all over preachy. It was just meant to be a true story film. Now, do I have any bad qualities with the film? Well, I would probably say the film is obviously not going to be for everybody because it doesn't have a really hope-filled tone. And knowing the true story behind it, it's also a film that will not sit well with everybody. It is a very sad and dark film. And it's based off a real life tragedy that did happen. And it's one I didn't really find out until after seeing the film, until the film had really been planned to be coming out. But other than that, I actually do enjoy this movie a lot. Some people may disagree with me, but I enjoyed it. So in the end, I would say, in my opinion, Silver Rain was worth watching and buying. For those that do want to see a realistic true story film based off a tragic shooting, or especially in today's era. Anyways, that's it for my view of Silver Rain. We're going to rank Silver Rain. Here's how I'm going to rank this movie. So overall, if you want to see a gritty, realistic film about a tragic shooting from 2010, then I would totally watch it by Silver Rain for your collection for sure, no doubt. And if we're going to rank Silver Rain, I'm going to give Silver Rain a damn 10 out of 10. Alright, there we go, guys. that wraps up my review for Silverane. So I want to know in the comments down below for those who have seen Silverane, what they thought about it. And until then, guys, that'll be it for this review. Thank you all for watching. If you like this and want to see more, don't forget to subscribe to Don G. Corleone.